What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Nick with Leverage Media, and welcome to another episode of Path to a Million podcast. I'm here with my new friend, Dr. Joe Ferrantelli with PostureCo.
Nice to be here.
We have been here at Parker being neighbors for the last couple of days.
Literally neighbors.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you guys have been busy over there. Everybody seems to like the software and very visually appealing booths. You've been doing well here at the show, I think.
Parker's been great this year.
That's good.
Absolutely.
So to give people a little bit of background on you, if you can just kind of walk them through, you know, you're a chiropractor, you were in practice, now you're doing the software thing, just give them kind of a little rundown of that.
Yeah, so I was always into sports, and everybody has their story on how they've gotten into chiropractic. For me, it was through sports, through powerlifting specifically.
Yeah.
I never knew exactly what it was all about, but my dad would bring us to the chiropractor, and suddenly I realized I was doing better in competing.
Yeah.
And I finally said something to the chiropractor, said, hey, you know, is what you're doing, you know, helping me? Because I can squat more after I come and see you.
Mm-hmm.
He said, absolutely. Why do you think your brother and the whole team comes to see me? And then I said, this is kind of an interesting, you know, career. As I was going through high school, I was a music major, so I was on path to be a drummer, and that's what I was going to do.
Yep.
And then I said, you know, this is really interesting, and it's actually a stable career, unlike being a starving musician.
Right.
So I went to chiropractic college after I went to Florida State for my undergrad, and that's how I went through, and I went to life in Atlanta.
Nice.
And and then along the lines, the last thing my chiropractor told me is, hey, while you go there, you got to check out, I was starting to use something called CBP with you and working on your posture, and that's why you were performing better. You need to check it out when you get to life.
Yeah.
And so that's when I got to life in 1995.
Great.
And then I graduated in 99.
Great.
Yeah.
And then when you graduated, you go right into practice? Did you associate somewhere?
Yeah, so I associated with that doctor for about, I want to say about a year, and I think it's always good to always work with somebody, especially in the area that you want to be. But work with, you know, somebody, get your feet wet a little bit, usually as an associate, and then find out what you want to do, you know. And for me, I found out, and anybody that's listening and new in practice, you'll find out what you want to do and what not to do in practice too.
Yeah.
You'll get a good feeling for that. So I learned a lot from him, and fortunately I had some good mentors along the way too. And I opened my own practice, I want to say it was in 2001, 2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also think that it's important to kind of demystify how difficult it is to run a business, because if you don't, if you've never run one and you have no idea, it can seem overwhelming. But when you see someone that you like and respect, or maybe even don't like and don't respect, run one, you're like, well, that was how I did it. I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
Right.
You know? So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the hard part is when you're starting out, many of us don't have any financial backing to be able to do it. And then we don't have any credit to speak of to get these big loans to start a practice. So, you know,
I had no track record of success.
Exactly,
also, you know.
right? And back when I was going, nobody would give me a loan. I could not get a loan to save my life. And it wasn't that I had bad credit. They just didn't want to take a chance at that time.
Well, the economy had just kind of gone through 2001 was
So
was a reception.
It wasn't really good. And I knew at that time, I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to, you know how you talk about seeing visions and where you want to be, you visualize, just like I did in athletics. I visualized what I wanted to be, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to fail, and if I do fail, I learned something along that way. So I took out, I wouldn't recommend maybe this method, but I believed in myself, I took out a bunch of credit cards, and I turned that into a lease, and took the working capital that was paid to me for the lease and used that as working capital to get my practice going. And then, boy, you got about a month of run time with doing something like that. So, yeah, I had to do a lot, you know.
I was talking to somebody the other day that he started his practice. His parents put up their house.
Oh,
and
so
it's
that's
like
pressure. That's some serious
like,
pressure.
That's serious pressure. A month of run time on credit cards is pretty serious pressure.
Yeah.
You know? So
I think it was like, I don't know, $20,000 or something like that. And I mean, that's motivation, knowing that you already have this huge student loan debt.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how I did it.
Well, that's great, man. And so you were in practice 2001 to 2002. You said you sold in 2012, so you were in practice for about 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And now I assume you sold it so that you could focus more on the software side of it. And
right. So I was always, I was fortunate enough to study under Don Harrison, the CBP. He was one of my mentors, along with Deed Harrison and many others in chiropractic biophysics. And when I went in, I just wanted to make sure that I chose the right path on how I wanted to be.
Yep.
And you know, it's interesting. You just put things in place to be able to manifest. So I was always doing and teaching. I got involved with teaching seminars, teaching, but there's only so long that you can do. I was working normal hours as a chiropractor, on the weekends flying all over the country to help out with the CBP seminars and teaching, flying back on a plane at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then seeing patients again on 8. Did that for 10 years.
Wow.
And I always handled the technology side also for chiropractic biophysics. And around the mid-2000s, I was more like a program manager for some software that we're developing. And in 2010, I had a chance to take that division over, and I did, and that's what PostureCo is. And so that's how I got a little bit more into it. I never thought going to chiropractic college I would be running a software company today. That wasn't my goal. I was always into tech, but it wasn't what I thought was going to happen.
Right.
You know.
And do you think that that your attraction to CBP and how analytical it is and how evidence-based it is helped you get into more like the software side? Because I just feel like with PostureCo or PostureScreen, it's just always evolving. You're always we've kind of been Facebook friends for a long time, so I kind of like know you from not knowing you.
Yeah.
And it just seems like you're always very like on point with like the details of things, and you're very like, I don't know if
well, it came from CBP, but the nice thing about where I am as software is because I lived chiropractic in those shoes, in the trenches, as we would say.
Right.
And I saw what we needed to do to be successful, and time is money. The biggest asset that I would say that you can't neglect is time doing things, spending with your family, time with your practice, and then just being as eager to go to practice as you are to go home and see your family and things like that. Yeah. And at the time, we had some software, both in X-ray and in posture specifically. It was reliable and valid. As anybody that knows chiropractic biophysics, if you don't, idealspine.com, shameless plug for Deed Harrison. But we're very analytical and published a lot of research, but the software we had took forever to use. Yeah. And I remember telling Don, I said, Don, this is great, however, it's taken us 10 minutes to do. Yeah. And when the iPhone came out in 2007, I said, you know, if they had software on this could be a neat interface. And then 2008 started getting apps, and I said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance and, you know, and start a company, you know, take the company.
That's
and
great.
So kind of
here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Crazy.
Like, did you have any experience with like building an app when you decided
I'm
going to?
If you want to hear this story, if you want to hear this story, this is great. So, I have this vision, right, that I'm going to do the software company. This is going to be transform the world. My idea at the time was I wanted software to be able to bridge chiropractors from around the world and ultimately get them into subluxation, structural-based care and posture work. And I said, this would be great. It'd be easy to disseminate. So I said, you know, I think I'm going to go ahead and form a company. Told my wife at the time, she was like, are you nuts? I'm like, no, this is going to work. She's like, oh, okay, how are you going to fund it? And I said, my retirement. I'm just going to take the money out. She's like, you're crazy. Yeah. She was like, we have a successful practice. I go, I understand, but I could help more people if I can help doctors, like I am in instruction, have a way to educate patients. Yeah. I can do it better than what's being done today. And she kind of thought, and many people thought I was crazy. Yeah. The old story about, you know, the crazy ones that can change the future and stuff. Yeah. The main thing is that when you're doing anything, even starting to practice, believe in yourself, because there's going to be a lot of people that, you know, are the naysayers. Right. And the only thing you have, because you don't have money, is the belief that this is going to change. So
little did she know the alternative was going and getting a bunch of credit cards.
Right, exactly. So she was already used to the successful practice.
You were doing a great job of just taking money you actually had.
So I couldn't find a programmer for the longest time. And then I found a programmer that would talk to me. We met at Starbucks, because apparently that's where you meet, you know, everybody. Sure. And so I sat down with Starbucks, and he listened to what I had. And this was a senior level programmer that could work anywhere at Apple. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time with me, or I was in the right place at the right time. He wanted to hear my ideas. And he goes, yeah, Dr. Joe, that's a great idea. How are you going to pay for this? I'm like, oh, you know, I got a little bit of retirement. He's like, no. how are you going to pay for this? I go, well, I got some money. He's like, how much money are you going to spend on this? I'm like, I got about $20,000 that I can kind of use. He's like, you'll spend that in a week.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. And he goes, you don't have what it takes. You need like angel investor money if you're going to do software like this. What your vision is easily going to be $1 million to get, to where you want it to be. It's going to take at least $1 million. And I'm like, well, I don't have that. And he was wouldn't let me hire him. He's like, I don't want to take your money because you can't deliver what you want to do at your budget. You can barely make a hello app, and I'm just being a realist. I don't want to take your money. I'm like, but I want to pay you. And he's like, I don't want to take your money. So I worked on him. I'm like, he was like, and then how are you going to market it? I'm like, oh, so I have a plan about that. And he's like, oh, let me hear you. So I told him, I'm like, I teach continuing ed with a company, and I think that I can expose people to that, and with trade shows like Parker.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. He goes, I don't want to take your money, but it's your money if you want to throw it away.
Yeah.
Totally didn't believe in me, didn't want to work for me. But he was like, it's interesting. I've never worked on this type of app. I want to use it as practice. That was 2009, 9-ish, almost 2010. And the end of 2010, when I had this idea, I filed patents, and then I launched at, I believe it was CalJam or Parker was the first. I debuted it at a CBP annual, but that's kind of in-house, right? Yeah. And then soon, being blessed, it was featured by Apple in up-and-coming things, and then it was picked up by Details Magazine, Men's Health, Money Magazine as like a top download for fitness, and not even healthcare, just in fitness. Yeah. And then it kind of got some traction, and I was truly blessed. So there's things that were put in place that, God was watching out for us, because you could have not paid for the publicity that I got early on. Yeah. Now you can have a great idea. Now the way the economy of the App Store works, you literally need to have angel investing to get noticed on the App Store. I was blessed by being where we got it,
And because you guys are not just in chiropractic,
we're in
trainers.
Well, we're obviously, exactly. So what's unique about what we have with PostureScreen, it's not a sales pitch for PostureScreen, but and I was a strength trainer before I was a chiropractor, so I grew up in health and fitness anyway. Personal trainers have the same problems that chiropractors have, or physical therapists. And what's unique is that we're all using the same, overlap of personal trainers look at posture, physical therapists look at posture, we all look at movement patterns. I like to think that as chiropractors, we have a pretty good edge on being able to correct it a little bit better, but these people do a great job too. And so I knew there had to be a way to be able to do that. And so we're into those genres as well, mostly like secondary markets. But the physical therapists, now we have universities that are physical therapy universities using our app in the universities to teach physical therapists. I mean, it's crazy. We have dentists in dental colleges using our app to predict dental occlusion by forward head posture.
Wow.
I mean, I never thought about that, but it was because of the ease of being able to disperse the app through the iTunes to expose to hundreds of thousands of people.
That's great. So with, real quick, because I want to go through like your practice story, and we talked a little bit about the different stages. So you ended up building $1 million practice. You started, I forget, you started from scratch?
Essentially I was an associate, and I opened up about 10 miles away from where I was at.
Okay.
Some patients will find you, even though I didn't go soliciting.
But you started something
from
zero.
Scratch.
Okay.
Yep, from scratch.
So the 0 to 250 mark, what was it that really allowed you to get to that stage?
I did a lot of outside talks.
Okay.
Kind of like what Brad 𝘀𝗶𝗵 discusses. And one thing that Don Harrison taught me is like, you have to do spinal care classes. You have to. I'm like, Don, that's so draining. He's like, but you're a good speaker. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, yeah, you trust me. You'll be able to convey your passion for whatever you do comes through. You need to do health talks, and you have to do them regularly. And everybody knows health talks can be draining until you get going in them, and then they're fun. And then that is what the health talks, and then getting outside talks where I would go into businesses. That's what grew my practice. And then I got into more med legal stuff and did a lot of personal injury and cash. And I was never really on insurance per se. Personal injury, little workers' comp, but mostly cash and personal injury. but I always wanted to educate, and I wanted to set myself up as unique and different. And I did a good job at differentiating myself than all the other chiropractors in my area, and got the attention of a lot of the medical doctors in my area.
Yeah.
And so they just knew that I did something that was different and it was scientifically based, and they referred after I built those relationships.
And you think like the CBP side of it is what
That's
you're talking
what
about,
opened the doors. So chiropractic biophysics specifically is what opened the doors with the medical community, because everybody tries to go out and say, I'm going to have lunch with an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah.
Well, of course they would go, and I would go with them. They would be prefaced, they would know a little bit about what it is that we would do, and then I would sit down, we'd always bring, a little bit about what's unique, and they would talk, but sometimes they're a little condescending, oh, you're just a chiropractor, right? At least it was back then. And so I would bring one of the papers that I was fortunate. I remember this exact thing that Don said, listen, you're gonna help, you son of a you-know-what, on this research paper. I'm like, Don, I don't have time to do this. He's like, you need to be published. As a published author, you don't realize what it's going to do for your career later on. I said, Don, I don't have time. He's like, you're going to help out. And it happened to be one of the papers on differentiation of acute and chronic neck pain subjects based on the cervical lordosis. And it came out in Spine, which I used that paper to really get some headway with neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons in my area and physiatrists, because I'd go out to dinner or lunch and I would show them and say, yeah, I'm part of a non-profit spinal research group is what I do, and I teach continuing ed and I run a practice here. I go, and you might like this. This is one of the papers that some of your cervical plating's based off of the normal lordosis. I said, and I go, you do a little bit about that? And they're like, yeah. I said, you know where that comes from? And they're like, no. Chiropractors. I go, here's the paper. And I go, I'm one of the authors on the paper, and also on that paper is 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗀𝗃, who's one of the world's, he was basically a father of physiatry. And you would have to see like the look that the orthopedic surgeon said, you're in Spine and you're in this little Tampa Bay area, and I'm like, I'm a chiropractor. Yeah, Then I would tell them the story on how I was unique and different. To steal one of my coach's terms, I coached with Dr. Fred 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗃𝗀𝗃, and he said that you have to set yourself up as being unique and different. And so that's kind of what I did. I used the research that I was doing anyway to educate the medical community and the attorneys on how I was different than the other people in my area. And then I did the same thing with patients through lay lectures, and it was all word of mouth at that point.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm in an accountability group with Fred, so I love
Yeah,
that guy.
yeah,
He's the best.
yeah.
He's the best. All right, so I forget. Did we do the 250 to 500? Was that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Like
So
just,
that
setting
was
yourself?
that was yeah. So that was pretty much what really started getting me. And then I got the guy that's behind me here. That's my a co-owner of PostureCo.
Yeah.
He ran MRI centers. And I'll give you guys a tip here real brief, because it could go on for how you can market and why we use things like the PostureScreen, or it wasn't even PostureScreen back then.
Yeah.
They were just photographs in a Word document, right? And a PowerPoint. There was no real software then. And we would show our pre-post changes. We put it into a packet. And what he taught me was, look, we're going to do what we did in MRI centers. He goes, we can mail the reports to any of these doctors.
Yeah.
We hand deliver them for a reason, because we want to have relationships with the staff of every doctor and healthcare practice in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah.
We're going to use that concept. We're going to hand deliver your notes to all the people here. So when a new patient came in, this really upped my practice. I would have them sign off that they gave me rights that I could, deliver their medical reports to their doctor, and they were like, "You're going to do what?" I said, yeah, we're gonna keep your doctor up to speed.
Yeah.
So what I did was a little bit, I went the extra step. So I would have the x-rays in there. At that time, it was just a Word document. It wasn't Posture with what we have. We were taking pictures of x-rays that we would hand dip and develop back in the day. We didn't have digital anything.
Yeah.
Take photographs of them, put them in a report, and then I would have my CV and everything like that. We would hand deliver them to the doctor's offices, because they can't refuse medical records on their patients. And after a while, my staff would get to know their staff. And of course, they would say, well, hey, does Dr. Joe work on headaches? He's an expert in headaches, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Get them to our spinal care class. And now I have the whole office under care.
Right.
Didn't even try to meet the doctor.
Right.
Now the staff is telling people they see that are in spinal pain, oh, you know what, I know you're here for allergies, but I got the best, I can see that you're struggling. My chiropractor can help you with that. And so they were referring before I even met their doctors. It may take about 6 months to a year to build these relationships, but it brings the credibility, and it was the Trojan horse. The reports now that we do for PostureScreen or PostureCo was a Trojan horse to get into those medical offices, the law firms, all those things to hand deliver the records.
Right.
So if it's PI, we're hand delivering any notes that they wanted right away.
Right.
So my staff could become friends with their staff.
That's right.
And then it was all about relationship building.
Well, it's you know, a lot of times the staff's the one that is doing the referral.
Yeah,
the
doctors don't know. So
want to keep track of that.
This is funny.
Yeah.
So what he had me doing is, thank you, Dr. Smith, for the referral. I attached the records. I believe I can help Mrs. Jones with their sciatica. Here are her x-rays, blah, blah, blah. Thank you again for the referral. They never referred.
Right.
So initially, you're not getting the referrals, but you're thanking. So when it comes back and say, they'll be like, hey, did we refer to Dr. Joe? Oh, okay. So I would kind of manifest that.
Sure.
So he already thought we were referring. I'm
Right.
like, okay, we'll continue referring.
That's funny.
So it worked. And then once I got to know the doctors, I said, you know that you never referred that patient to me.
Yeah.
I sent him to you. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it worked. But it was a handwritten note. It
But I
wasn't
also,
typed.
another important point is that whole 6 to 12 month thing.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, with Leverage Media, we help people create content and we push that out.
Right.
And I tell them, I'm like, just close your eyes, put your head down for 12 months, and assume nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Assume not one person is going to watch, no one's going to come in. They will.
Right.
Just assume they won't. But if you do that 12 months, the next 12 months looks very different.
Yep.
Just like with that, it's like when you're dealing with human beings and there's like impressions and soft touches and like no hard sale, eventually they just, the moment arises, you know, but you have to be consistent.
Right, and I tell like young doctors that too. I'm like, if your motivation is money, you chose the wrong profession because you can make money easier doing certain other things. You can make a ton of money in our health profession in chiropractic, but your intention needs to be helping the person, because when you truly care about somebody, and it's how we grew our business. I care about the doctors that we work with, right? When you build a real relationship with them and you care about them, the money's going to come.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to, you know, I always joke when I'm when I'm teaching about how I'm a bad salesman, because I am. I tell people the truth. You know, sometimes our software's not meant for them.
Yeah.
You know what? Because when they trust you, you're going to be successful.
Sure.
That's all secondary, and it will happen, but you're absolutely right. Sometimes the seeds that you plant now won't pay off for a year easily.
Right.
It didn't pay off for our company for the first 5 years.
But you're going to be doing something for those next 5 years.
Absolutely.
You might as well be planning.
Absolutely.
Because you can't, you know, farm until you've planted.
Absolutely.
You got to get that process started.
And you don't realize until you've been out for a while how much the things like what Palmer said, the little things that you say, think, or do will affect countless millions later on.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you what, on Facebook, an old patient found me that I remember not signing on for care. Mm-hmm. And they said, oh, Dr. Joe, I see you're running software now. I just wanted to thank you. It was that posture exams that you did. I finally found a corrective care doctor, and you were right the whole time. Even though I didn't listen to you back then, it was my neck that was the problem, you know? And it was like, how many of those people do you realize, even the ones that drop out of care, if you do it the right way, they're going to find maybe a good chiropractor to go to. So your heart has to be in it 100%, and if it is, you'll be successful.
Yeah, I agree. So on that 500 to $1 million path, what were the things that really made the biggest difference?
When you get on that level, honestly, the thing that I would recommend that you do now, looking back retrospectively, is you can't have a practice that's built on Dr. Joe. It has to be, you have to be able to replicate the office without you being there. And at that level, because otherwise you're going to get burnt out. You can't do everything. Even though as a chiropractor you think you can, when you're slow you can, but you can't scale that. So you need something, because you're going to need to be able to take vacations, otherwise you're going to get burnt out. You need to be able to have other people. The key is you have to have systems that are not based on your personality. Your personality may have gotten you there, and your caring may have gotten you there, but you got to also be able to work with doctors in your office that can do what you do, and the patient doesn't feel like they're not getting Dr. Joe, you know, and drop out of care. So if I was advising at that level where you're starting to get really successful, you have to start grooming other doctors that want to be a part of your business and grow that together. So that way you guys can each cover shifts. I was fortunate in my practice, I had a doctor I worked with for 7 years, and we basically had, even though we had 2 separate businesses, it looked like it was one business, and we could work with each other all the time, and it worked out fantastic.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. So if you have systems in your practice, that saves a lot. That's the biggest, what will take you to that level.
Well, and it's a good thing
it
about
keeps you from burnt out.
It's a good thing about CBP is that it's
Absolutely.
very systems based,
right?
To where it's not like based on somebody's hands or personality,
right?
It's like this
and
is
getting
the way
your
that
teams. And I would say everybody has to communicate the same way.
Right.
You can't have a CA that's saying something different than your front desk person.
Yeah.
You have to, and that's something I learned later on. Like when I was coaching with Dr. Fred, he was like, look, he's like, Joe, you can say anything to the patient and get them to commit because of your passion and your certainty. Other associates that are new cannot do what you do.
Right.
You were on research papers, they weren't. So they don't have the same credibility. You have to have the systems that take that over.
Right.
And so the little things that I learned later in my career, like doing like correction potential x-rays, are not just for you, but they're for patient education.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known some of those things. So like young docs, I would say, get with somebody that you want to practice like them. Get with those doctors and really pick their brain, even if you're not working in their offices.
Yeah, that's great. So with PostureScreen, I think it's such an amazing tool for not only like in the office, but also going out and being able to market your practice. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the best uses of it outside of the office to help.
Well, now, if anybody's been using it for a while, you need to check out, make sure you have a new device, because we can do something like called augmented reality, which is literally that the app will place all the points for you,
right?
By just pointing it at the person, which is like, it's almost like Star Trek, which is really cool. But we have something called remote screen, which allows you to almost do like virtual spinal screenings. So doing reactivations or being able to get the spouse that won't come in, the wife can go back, take pictures in a remote screen app. It goes back to the doctor. They get a push notification saying, hey, there's a exam waiting, and they digitize it just like they did, the patient was there.
That's great.
I would say that would be a very good way of using it besides, the normal uses out of spinal screening.
Yeah.
We started out as a spinal screening tool.
Yeah.
But it's grown into a clinical tool now that they use at every initial re-exam. And my advice would be is if you use it in a spinal screening setting, only do like the lateral view or maybe a 2 view, but when they come in, change them into clinical clothing, like guys, shorts. Women, sports tops and shorts too. People are like, oh, you mean I have to do laundry and do that? Yeah, you don't want to rely on the patient because you want it to be a clinical exam.
Right.
You can't, like in this, how are you going to tell what my posture is?
Yeah.
If you have a person that's fully dressed, they can't see their own posture. You fix them, they can't see a big change. But if they have a trunculus off to their side and they can see their ribs, there's other things you can educate them on because they now realize what's going on.
Right.
It's not hidden under clothing, right?
Yeah.
So I would say outside spinal screen when they come in, do it again, and then it might be a week, 2 weeks, do a comparison, say, you know what? I know you're not hurting me, even though you were in spinal screening, you say you're doing great. Look, your posture's identical. It wasn't the time that you were standing that one time.
Yeah.
It's reproducible. We need to fix this.
Yeah.
Or even when they're out of pain and they haven't committed to corrective care, do another one saying, look, I know you're out of pain, feeling good. There's no difference yet, but it's going to come back. And then once you start doing corrective care, you can show the changes, and that's what really helped my practice too.
That's great. When they're in the practice, and I think the last time that I used it, like I'm looking at the screen now, I think the last time that I used it, it was just the pictures and you put the dots on.
Right.
But now you've got like the functional movement screen to where they can do the squat and.
Yeah. So the cool part, talking about saving time, and again, not a sales pitch, but it links to the corrective exercise. So if you do posture or a functional movement type screen, like a overhead squat, AP lateral, all that type of stuff, I worked with a doctor, Dave Cruz from Web Exercise, who has like a master's in kinesiology and all this type of stuff, and exercise science. And we went through with all the algorithms, say, okay, when a person is leaned over too much and this, it equals this.
Yeah.
And we give a subset. So for posture, it was easy. I worked with Dean Harrison on that. And his content is in there with the mirror image exercise library. So you do a posture screen, hit suggested exercises, the correct list of exercise for that person's abnormal posture comes up. So it saves a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, well, like, not just time, but, like, if you don't know that now,
right.
you know, as the doctor, like, you haven't gotten the training or whatever,
right.
to be able to start to understand that and start to see those patterns and to not have to be the one that's diagnosing it or deciding what exercises, but you still get to be the expert in delivering.
Right, and it helps a lot. And then what's nice about that platform is you can literally track when the patient logs in and does their exercise, so it makes them accountable.
Right.
They can't just do what, when I was in practice, it was they had a handwritten sheet.
Yeah. Well,
anybody can fill that in. Yeah, doc, I did the exercise. But if they don't log in every day, which they're not going to do, and document what they did, you can hold it up against them and say, Miss Jones, I don't see that you've logged in to do your exercise for your pelvis, and you're complaining about your sciatica. I thought you were committed to your health care.
Yeah.
And you confront them because now they're responsible for their care. Whereas before, when I was in practice, it was hard to do that. Now with digital age, we can do that and keep them accountable.
What other thing, like with the posture, it's PostureRay, right? Is the
right,
X-ray
the X-ray
marking.
software.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that, because I remember looking into that a long time ago. We ended up, when we moved to our new practice, we didn't take the X-ray with us.
Right.
But when I was just like, man, that seemed like such a great way to be able to mark things quickly.
Yeah, so
I'd imagine it's probably gotten better.
Yeah, think of it as an X-ray EMR system. Basically, we're the intermediate, so they still use whatever digital X-ray they're used to.
Yeah.
You won't waste time marking with their system of marking. You pull your DICOM images into PostureRay or push them right into PostureRay. You digitize them, and where that came from was all the spine research that we did. We used to use a software that Adid, myself, and Jason Haas, and a bunch of others that were coming up would digitize all these X-rays for the normal spinal model. All we did was take all that code and put it into a user interface that a clinician could use, because it's the same thing with PostureScreen. Now we have documentation, but we have a report for the patient's education and a report for clinical documentation that would go to an insurance or a third party.
Yeah.
And you can document things like instability, and it makes a complete report. We have radiology centers now using it. That's right? Great. So you don't have to have X-ray in the office. You can get them on CD and import them.
Yeah.
But as far as it's the same type of thing, it's all goes back to education, and then if you're doing the right rehab with them, you can show them pre and post. Or pre-post injury, the same thing, to show them what happened to their spine. And then it gets them more engaged.
That's great.
Yeah.
Does PostureRay have anything where, like, you put it in there, kind of like with the PostureScreen?
Oh, you mean like the automated? I cannot confirm nor deny that we're working on something, or I cannot confirm nor deny that we filed patents on such a thing, but maybe in the future there might be something, but right now, not yet.
That's great.
I didn't say anything. I didn't leak any bad information out there, right? You didn't hear it from me.
Right. So what's the future look like for PostureScreen and PostureCo?
The future, what I want to do is just keep adding things to it that were pain points for, still to this day, for my friends and myself and my colleagues, and make it easier to document their patient care, but to keep people engaged.
Yeah.
That's the key, and that's the whole reason why we use lean screen, which was something that I patented also, from using photographs to be able to predict body composition. That could be a whole podcast, how we do that with all the math that we do. But what it allows is, if somebody had a practice where they at least interact with personal trainers, or they do weight loss. If they do weight loss in their practice, where people have a problem is converting those weight loss patients to chiropractic, or chiropractic to weight loss. And they should all be together. Nutrition's part of everything.
Right.
So by having a lean screen and a posture screen use the same images, I can not only do your posture, but I can also predict your body composition, and more importantly, your waist to hip ratio from the same photographs, and you can do it virtually as well too.
That's great. That's great. Any other tips that you think that the doctors out there should be focused on? Do you see anything that people are not doing correctly that they really should be?
I think the biggest take home is you can't be an expert in everything. So when it comes to things like how to get out and market, or how to use Instagram, like we were talking about, you have to be engaged now, and you have to be engaged with being able to write blogs, be able to do Instagram, Facebook, now Snapchat, Twitter, all those avenues to gain and reach out to clients and patients, or potential patients. You can't be the expert in everything. You can't. I mean, I stumbled on this, but I was no expert doing software. But I tell you what, I reach out for people to do my graphic art. I don't do it all myself because I'm a chiropractor.
Right.
I don't do my own programming. I'm not a programmer.
Yep.
You know, early on you try to do everything in Microsoft Word when you're starting to practice. Go with people that are experts in those fields because you're wasting time and money trying to do things and learn things. Have a real IT person for your practice. Don't try to learn, be a network specialist. So find experts in every aspect, build a relationship with them, and hire them on and work something out. Like I couldn't afford an IT person. I traded out, bartered out care.
Yeah.
I wanted a clean car, bartered out care with somebody who couldn't afford care, but he washed my car.
That's great.
And then I did that with all different industries. And you know what? It worked out really well. So I was the expert with, I remember my network guy saying, Dr. Joe, I know you know the spine, but don't ever touch network again. Your router was a mess. Stay away.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, I get it.
I got it.
Yep.
And what little I knew about you coming into this, I knew you love drumming. I see drumming videos on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
Who are the top 3 drummers of all time?
Okay, of all time. Well, I obviously who passed away just recently is 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗃.
I don't know who that is.
From Rush.
From Rush, okay.
Right, so he just recently passed away, unfortunately, with brain cancer. My go-to guys, like right now, there's that I follow, is more in the jazz fusion area, would be a guy named 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗃, Vinny Caluta, and my drum teacher, his name's Mike Johnston. And you can find him on Mike'sLessons.com if there's drummers out there. He does it all online. I think there's this time, because of Instagram and YouTube, the kids coming out are playing stuff that took me, I was going to be a music major, so I played all the time. Took me 10, 15 years to learn. These kids are coming out at 9 and 10 because they've been watching YouTube, which are basically drum lessons for so long. I would say that, you know, those are my top drummers that I love, but there's so many that I could list a bunch. I mean, 20 of them now.
What makes a good drummer, like as someone who doesn't really know much about it?
Just like any other musician, playing along with musicians and not acting like you have to do a drum solo every 5 minutes, because you're not playing for another drummer, you're playing for the music. And I would say that makes a great drummer. Sure, you should be able to do a drum solo like if you were 𝘀𝗵𝗿𝗃𝗃, but as far as that's only one small segment. You got to be able to keep time, and your other musicians need to be able to depend on you, right? So for me, that's my outlet. Like I don't have to gig out, and even though I'm enjoying doing recording and things like that, I don't have to do that because chiropractic provided for me, right? But I would say that anybody out there, they need to find a passion that gives them some downtime that's outside of working in the office. Because that will bring sanity back to them. And I wish I had never taken a 20-year layoff from music because all my hormone levels balanced a lot better, especially my cortisol levels, because I track my blood levels significantly when I started back with music.
That's great.
So, yeah, I would say find your passion outside of chiropractic as well, too.
I'm such a big believer in having that thing that it's like you have no way of making money at it.
Right, exactly.
You can spend hours doing it.
Even if I wanted to be, I mean, you're talking a musician for our gigging night, you're lucky you're going to make $100.
Right.
You know, so.
I'm just, you know, especially as entrepreneurs, we're always looking for like, well, how can I monetize that? And even things that we enjoy doing. Like I enjoy business, but it can't be your hobby as well because there's still stress involved with that. And,
absolutely. So it's my, you know, if you can't get a hold of me, you know, through all the social media and stuff, if you're a drummer, you'll find me on the drum former groups. I interact more on the drumming community now than I do at chiropractic. It's fun. And you know what? The same problems that you see in our profession with people bickering, same thing in drumming.
Well, it's
people
funny.
Bickering.
It's funny the things that you said you liked about it and what made a good one. A lot of similarities to like an office. And,
it's no different. You know, and being a musician, I'm blessed to have really practiced, and I wasn't born with any skills. I just practiced. That's what I love to do. You know. So.
Well, where can they find out more about PostureScreen?
So at postureanalysis.com or posturescreen.com.
Right.
And for CBP, it's idealspine.com.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I really appreciate being
Honor.
on here. I've always kind of like followed you from afar, and I really appreciate all the work that you do. We've used PostureScreen for a long time.
Thank you.
Love it. Helps out in the office as well as at screenings.
Thank you.
I think it's probably helped. there are fewer tools that I think that have helped more people get under chiropractic care than this one. So it's
that was
great.
the goal from the very beginning. So I'm honored and humbled that people have really liked it.
That's great. Well, I appreciate it, and keep up the good work, man.
Thank you.